Greetings everyone. Welcome to Narayana IAS. This is Chaitanya. This is a part of the daily news analysis in which we select certain articles from the Hindu as well as Indian Express. The articles that have been selected today are as follows. First one, credit rating the government's view. It is from the Indian Express, page number 23. Next, in a stranglehold. It is from the Indian Express, page number 16. Next, awards for votes. It is from the Indian Express, page number 8. Next, the fourth, Ministry holds meet with CMs of northeastern states over lag in DevINE scheme. It is from the Hindu, page number 10. The last one, that is the fifth one. Government aims to set up 17,000 creches across India. It is from the Hindu, page number 12. Now, let us start our daily news analysis. The first article is on the credit rating agencies. The government's view is that the credit rating agencies' methodology needs changes. The way in which the rating has been allocated to India is not reflecting the macroeconomic reality, the investment prospects of this country, or the ability of the country to repay the debt. This has wider implications. The global credit rating agencies enjoy a supreme clout in terms of making an assessment of the ability of the country's sovereign credit ratings. The sovereign credit ratings are important. As we go along in this slide, you will be able to know. And this assessment by these credit rating agencies has an impact on economies of the countries. And thus, careful measurement is required. Methodology should be transparent. It should give us some insights, and the insights should be realistic rather than based on some subjective opinions. That is nothing but the opinions of the experts who are producing these ratings. The experts who sit and discuss and write and conduct a research and give a rating. They have to clearly spell out the mechanisms. This is what we are going to see in this article. The article is Credit Ratings, the Government's View. The relevance of the topic, credit rating agencies, issues with the credit rating, the present credit rating. The syllabus, GS Paper 2, important international institutions, agencies, fora, their structure and mandate. At the same time, economic development of GS Paper 3 years. The context is simple. The Finance Ministry has recently released a document which has re-examining narratives of the credit rating agencies. It has a collection of essays given by Chief Economic Advisor who has commented upon the credit rating agencies. That is our focus in this article and their impact on the growth of India. Now, what is this credit rating? See, these credit rating agencies give sovereign credit rating. The credit rating agencies, the three important ones are the Fitch, Moody's, Standard & Poor's. The sovereign credit rating is an indication of the ability of the country to repay the debt that it has taken. The government of India does not only take credit from within the domestic market, but also in the international market. Even the companies of India that are incorporated in India borrow money not only in India, but also in the international market. The ability of the country to repay the debt is measured through the sovereign credit rating. The higher the rating, the higher is the ability of the country to repay as per this metric. If India has a favorable sovereign credit rating, its ability to borrow money that to at lesser interest is higher. Thus, this has an indication on the debt levels of the country. For example, in this case, India. At the same time, see, the governments of the states have the highest ability in terms of repaying. Why? Because of the extent of resources it has on account of the taxes that it collects, and also through various avenues through which it sees that it mobilizes the revenue. Thus, its ability to repay the debt is higher when compared to other entities within the country. And if the government itself hasn't got the ability to repay the debt, what could be expected of the private entities? Thus, the private entities are charged a bit higher when compared to the way in which the governments are charged. And if the country like India is charged higher on account of the poor sovereign credit ratings, its companies will be charged even higher. Given the requirement of capital for a country like India, there is a necessity to see that sovereign credit rating is good. The capital is required. Why? Because our country do not have enough capital. Capital in the sense here, the money in terms of loans, that to long-term loans or the investments. Hence, we still depend upon the foreign investments and foreign capital. It's not that we do not have the capital, but it's not enough to quench the country's thirst of investment capital. As the sovereign credit rating is important. As the rating given by Fitch, Moody's, and Standard and Poor's is important for the country like India, so that we could mobilize the financial resources at lower interest rates. And thus, our increasing reliance on the debt market at the global level is an indication that we need proper rating. But the problem is it a credible metric? Why? Because if the risk attached to the country like India is higher, they will charge the risk premiums. Risk premiums is nothing but the higher interest rates the countries pays in comparison to the countries whose credit rating agencies is good or better when compared to India. The countries that have the best credit ratings receive or have the ability to raise money at lower interest rates. Whereas a country like India, whose credit rating is poor, will be charged higher interest when compared to the countries which have better credit rating agencies. This difference could be called as an interest premium. Thus, India will be charged interest premium when compared to other countries. Now, what is the problem? The problem is reliance on the qualitative variable. See, to assess the ability of an individual or entity to repay the loan, what we have to take is quantitative metric. How much money it could mobilize. Its past credit history. That is, if an individual or entity has repaid the money on the loan that he has taken in the past or not. Whether he is defaulting or whether he is repaying the loan again and again. Whether he has the ability to generate more and more revenue so that he could repay the loan again and again. So these are the quantitative parameters through which we could assess an individual's ability. For example, India's growth rate is close to 7%, greater than 7% at the moment, GDP growth rate. Thus, India's wealth is rising year after year. That too at the rates of 7% when the whole world is not able to pull off even 3 to 4%. Thus itself is an indication that its resource capabilities are rising. Thus, it has the ability to repay. Similarly, through these parameters, we have to assess the ability of a country to repay the loans, or the entities like banks or entities like companies to repay the loans. But that is not happening. They are taking various qualitative parameters. The qualitative parameters are nothing but they are subject to issues like a rule of law, freedom of speech, etc., etc. Many kind of parameters are taken which cannot be quantified. And who set this standard to get higher ratings? The credit rating agencies are deciding the quality of a country and then giving a metric to it. That is, they are giving certain percentage on that decision and thus they are assessing the credit rating. This is not acceptable. What we have to take is the parameters like the GDP growth rate, its past credit history, etc., etc. This is leading to bandwagon effect. That is, if one credit rating agency is giving poor rating to India, it is followed by other credit rating agencies. You already seen the three important credit rating agencies whose rating is taken seriously by international investors, and on the basis of which the interest rates of the country is decided. And this opaqueness in methodology is an important issue. Opaqueness in the sense they are not clearly spelling out. They are not clearly spelling out the parameters that are used to give rating. Like for example, for the parameters like rule of law, freedom of speech, etc., etc., are being considered, but they are not clearly spelling out the weightage of these parameters. The parameters should be quantitative enough, and they should not be subjective or subject to the view of experts. Who are these experts? Even you have to reveal how these experts have been chosen, etc., etc. All this should be clearly spelled out, or else it will impact the entire economy like the country like India. It could have realized more potential through the lower interest rate loans that it could have borrowed from other countries, but that is not happening. It is simply a perception of few group of experts. Whether this group of experts have the caliber to actually comment upon a particular country's economy is also important. Do they really have the skills? Do they actually reflect the ground realities? Do they actually comprehend the India's economic growth potential, its budget deficit, its fiscal deficit, etc.? Are they giving importance to these metrics that are clearly visible, that are clearly spelled out, or on the subjective parameters is the question. Next is the arbitrary indicators that they are using to assess a country's credit rating. We already seen it. Next is, if you look at how they are doing it, for example, there is a Fitch rating company. We have already seen the three important ones. This is one among the three. It takes comfort from high level of foreign ownership of the banks, and it doesn't trust the public-owned banks like the way in which Indian SBI, etc., which are owned by the government. And this assumption is false altogether. How could you expect a foreign-owned bank to be much better in terms of financial health or autonomy when compared to the public banks? The public sector banks might lack autonomy when compared to the foreign banks. You have to consider the needs of particular countries. A developing country like India still have the requirement of the public sector banks or public-owned banks, but because of the need to carry out developing functions, because the country is not well developed, especially in implementation of the welfare schemes and to promote financial inclusion. But that is not being considered. Yes, just they are considering that the banks should be owned by the foreign or private rather than the public-owned banks. This parameter cannot judge the ability of the economies. It is just an assumption made on grounds that are the likings of the credit rating agencies rather than the reflection of the ground reality. Then it tends to discriminate developing countries. Why? Because we are seeing that the developed countries are given higher ratings. That even though certain developed countries have the debt to GDP ratio greater than 100%. If that is greater than 100%, and whereas India is less than 100%, how could you give such a rating to a country like India? And then is the welfare and development functions of a country like India requires the public sector banks, as we already seen. And the rating agencies actually do not convey their assigned weights, as we already see. Assigned weights should be clearly spelled out. It should be objective, as we already see, like, for example, the GDP growth rates, etc. And there is a strong feeling among the developing countries that there is subjective assessment. Subjective assessment is nothing but the opinions are given more priority when compared to hard facts. Next, it is not a reflection of India's growth rate, right? Because India is a bright star among the economies, the two major economies who are not able to perform well. India has been given BBB minus rating during the last 15 years. And this is the lowest investment grade rating. This ultimately impacts the borrowing rates, as we already see. This despite the fact that it was 12th largest in the economy in 2008, and now it's the 5th largest in the year 2023. And it is the second highest growth rate recorded during the period among all the competitor economies. Okay. So this itself is an indication that it is not reflecting the actual ability of this country. And what it impacts is the serious implications it holds on the capital in terms of investments or borrowing. So you could borrow at lower interest rate. At the same time, because credit rating is good, investors will take priority or will give priority in investment in the country. The way forward. What is the way forward? We have to clearly spell out the parameters. It should be foolproof. It should be objective. We have to be realistic. It should be based on the repayment history and should be objective, as you already seen. And it should be clearly communicated with the countries. If they want to give the suggestions, they have to give the suggestions, like, for example, reduce market risk, improve the regulatory environment, etc. The clear guidelines are to be given so as to improve the governance rather than assessing on the basis of these parameters, like the way recommendations are given by International Monetary Fund, rather than giving a particular rating to this country. But this doesn't mean that we need not work on our fiscal issues. The fiscal issues, that is nothing but our resources, our capital expenditures, etc. That is the budget health, the health of the India's economy, which is measured in terms of fiscal deficit. Our fiscal deficit are high. We have to improve our fiscal deficit through policies like fiscal consolidation. This will enable us to see that the risks in the near future are lower. Of course, the government of India is carrying out the fiscal consolidation policy, but we need to be doing it on a war footing. And then the conclusion is the methodology is to be changed. Then only there is a possibility that the developing countries could also be given higher credit ratings and improve their ability to prosper. This completes the article. Now let us look into the next article. This article tries to explain the recent incident where the WFI chief selection has been condemned by various athletes. And Sakshi Malik has completely retired from the sports and said that in protest of the election of the WFI chief, she is going to retire from the sports, active sports. You know, she has won a bronze medal in Olympics and yet have retired from the sports itself is an indication of the pitiable state of the administration of sports in this country. Bajrang Punia has also set to return the Padma Shri award he has received on account of its achievement in sports of the wrestling. So this requires us to delve deeper into the issue that exposes the politicization of the sports. At the same time, the sports being a place where the women are not feeling safer. Thus, we require to delve into the societal issues as well that are structurally ingrained. Why the society is hostile to women. Though on one extent we see the worship of the women as goddesses, on the other we have the sexual harassment, rapes, etc. We need to understand the mindset of the members of the society, why this dichotomy in terms of observing the woman. This requires us to delve deeper into the workplace issues. How the workplace is becoming unsafe to the woman, why it has become unsafe to the woman. At the same time, we need to understand the administration of the sports as well. Why the administration is not able to see that the workplace is safer. That is, how the sports is safe to both men and women to explore their talent. At the same time, why our sports is underperforming. Our sports is not able to produce enough medals at the Olympics. Even in other sports like football, etc., we are not at the top of our game, despite having 1.25 billion population. The title of the topic is In a Stranglehold. So the topic we are going to learn about the sports administration. Added to it, we'll be able to understand why the workplace is unsafe to the women at the moment. Coming to the UPSC syllabus, we'll be able to learn and relate the topic to GS Paper 2, important aspects of governance, transparency and accountability, because these are lacking in administration of the sports of this country. We have previous year questions modeled on the present theme that we have taken for discussion. For example, an athlete participates in Olympics for personal triumph and national glory, etc. This has been asked in the UPSC examination in the year 2014. Now let us look into the context. The context is Bajrang Punia returned the Padma Shri. At the same time, we have seen Sakshi Malik retiring from the sport. The Sports Administration of India. Sports administration in terms of athletics is carried out by these 5 bodies. Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Sports Authority of India, Olympic Association, State Olympics Association, National and State Sports Federation. We are not going to go deeper into the structure of the administration of the sports. That is structure like various bodies, etc. It is just to give a cursory view that even the state as well as the center together try to coordinate and achieve excellence in sports. But there are issues with the sports as we are going to focus on the issues in this topic. The issue being corruption. The corruption allegations has been widespread. That is one of the reasons why we are not able to hold the Commonwealth Games as grandiosely as we could have done. The infrastructure built to conduct the Commonwealth Games itself is an indication that our administration and the administration of sports requires thorough overhaul. Why? Because there is a scope for corruption. Why is there a scope for corruption? Because there is a lack of transparency. The transparency is lacking. And transparency in terms of the execution of decisions. Execution itself is an indication that implementation of the decisions that are to be taken, and how these decisions are to be implemented, either for constructing sporting infrastructure or sponsoring the athletes so that they could perform well. As you know, active support from the state is essential for the athletes to perform well because of the kind of budgetary requirements, or else we will not be able to produce enough athletes. And this is done not only by our country, all countries do it. Both the public and private involved in terms of providing active funding, because the costs incurred are higher. Either it might be diet, it might be the professional trainers, etc. But what we are finding in this country is, due to the lack of transparency, there is corruption. If there is corruption, there aren't enough resources that are necessary for improving our sports. Either it might be infrastructure, either it might be the talent. And that is one of the reasons why there is politicization of the sports in the first place. We are finding again and again the politicians are deeply entrenched with the sports. Either it might be cricket, either it might be Olympics. The protest held by the wrestlers itself is an indication how politicians are misusing the positions of power in the sports bodies. And that is one of the reasons they have come onto the streets in protests of the misuse of the power by the politicians. They've gone to the extent to use the power for extracting sexual favors. As many women athletes have complained about the sexual harassment. Of course, these allegations have not been proved yet, but that doesn't mean that we need not go thoroughly into what is happening in these bodies. The mere allegation itself is an indication that there is something wrong in the administration. At the same time, as these are politicians, the power of these politicians is far-reaching, also have the ability to impact the police. Given the lack of police reforms, given the politicization of the police institution, because the politics of the country have the ability to influence the decisions taken by the police officials. The police as an institution is not independent in this country, but because of the act or nothing but the legislations. The police come within the subject of the states. States are not willing to take the reforms to see that the police functions independently or autonomously. There is a requirement of autonomy, because for a law and order, we require autonomy. If one violates the law, if he is in the power or she is in the power, there is a chance of misuse of that power, and see that the violation of the law could be averted by seeing that the police could be influenced by the decisions. This is one of the reasons why they are not able to see that their grievances are addressed. Next, there is the lack of access to sports. The sporting infrastructure in the country is in a pitiable situation at the moment, especially at the ground level. This is one of the reasons why our performance is way less. Even a tiny country like Croatia is able to outperform India in the 2016 Olympic Games. And this country has a population of 1.4 billion. It has the potential, but we require certain changes in the administration. Then comes the issue of the absence of effective policy making. We are not serious enough to see that this country performs well in sports. We need to allocate more resources. The minor or meager resources that we are allocating are not sufficient at the moment. We need to increase the funding. Our funding is lesser even when compared to the United Kingdom, whose GDP is lower than us. Of course, the GDP per capita of UK is higher. Even for US it is higher. That is why we are not able to allocate enough resources. But yet what is important is at least utilize the extent of resources that have been allocated. The states especially are not allocating enough funds for the improvement of the sports administration in this country. Less than 1% budget of the states is being set aside for development of sports. Sports in India is a state subject. Thus, we require to change the priorities. We require to increase the allocation of the funds, especially the central government, given the ability to fund, given the ability to use the resources for development of the sports. It has to come forward. It has to support state in its endeavor to see that the resources allocated are higher. At the same time, we have to develop enough infrastructure in the country so that the sports could be promoted. And now what we are seeing is the sport, cricket is being promoted at higher level when compared to other sports. We need to see that it is distributed among different sports. Similarly, there are other reforms that are required, but these are the major issues faced that are the reasons for the recent protests. In addition to those reasons, we have other reasons. The female sexual harassment in sports. See, this issue is broadly connected to the sexual harassment experienced by the women at workplaces. Thus, what it shows is the work environment provided to the women are not safe enough for them to function effectively, productively, etc. Without the respect for their dignity, you cannot expect them to work with their full potential. We are going to look into the reasons why this is happening again and again, not only in sports, but other arenas. One of the reasons why the people who are committing these atrocities are going scot-free is the politicization of the sports, in sporting infrastructure, in the sports arena that we are referring to at the moment. Next, a positive and healthy work environment is satisfying required to improve the performance and productivity. And if this continues, then the females will not find it attractive to participate in athletics in the country. Similarly, in other sports, because politicization is not only limited or politicization of sports is not only limited to these athletics, but it is also far widespread. Either it might be football, either it might be cricket, etc. The reasons why we are seeing the sexual harassment, not only in the sports, but also at various workplaces. Firstly, the gender biasness in the workplace. The gender biasness is nothing but the position of men in sports or other workplaces. They are in the powerful positions, and the number of women represented in the powerful positions are lower when compared to the men. The men in powerful positions have the decision-making power, and these decisions could influence the careers of women. Thus, what happens is they become dependent upon this male, and thus this is nothing but a vulnerable position. And the men who are in the top positions or the higher echelons in decision-making have the power. The problem is the misuse of the power, and this misuse could ultimately influence the men to see that they could extract certain favors from the woman. And the problem could also be traced to the patriarchal mindset of the society, as if it is their right to extract such favors, as if it is normal to commodify the woman. And this normal is to be changed in the first place. It is not acceptable at all. But the value systems of such behavior is to be changed, altered altogether, to make the workplace safer to the women. And one of the reasons is the commodification of women by these men. Of course, it is not that this is the thing that is happening everywhere. This is general, or this is acceptable by the society. But this is how certain individuals behave. And this pattern is widespread. That is why we need to change the patterns in the first place. That is the reason why there is sexual harassment. Next, the cultural attitudes and gender roles. The cultural attitudes that we are referring to is the patriarchal mindset. This has to be changed. The superiority complex that is developed in men on account of the mindset of patriarchy. Patriarchy, which is far widespread in the society. Patriarchy is nothing but the dominant position of the men in almost all walks of life. It might be family, it might be politics, it might be economy, etc. What we find in these institutions is a pattern that has been built where the favorable positions are generally filled by men. It is not that women do not have the place, but their entry is limited. the opportunity is limited. And thus what we require is the changes, overall changes. And this mindset of the superiority on account of the patriarchal attitudes. We need to move towards a society which believes in equality and which cherishes equality, seeing everyone as equal, it might be men or women. Or else this problem may continue, thus it requires thorough institutional reforms. Then the lack of awareness and education. One of the cultural attitudes that we are referring to is among the beliefs of the women as well. The misguided belief that because of their inferior positions, they should submit to the power of men. And one of the reasons why sexual harassment takes place in this is on account of this attitude which has been built in a misguided manner on account of the prevalence of the patriarchy in society. Thus, we have to generate awareness that this is unacceptable, and thus there is a equality. There is a thing called equality, and men and women are equal, and that is what is required to see that these do not occur, and even women will raise to the occasion and file complaint and see that the grievances that they are raising are to be addressed. And lack of awareness and education is with regards to the rights that have been extended to women regards to tackling these issues. And these are to be extensively communicated to the public so that the public is sensitized. Even the public should be made aware that so-and-so is unacceptable. And thus, we could see the law being a cause for a change. Slowly, the institution changes and slowly the mindset of the people could also change. And that is why considered a deeper problem, structural problem, where the structure of the society itself is built such that it is favorable to men. And that ultimately is leading to inferiority complex among the women, the stigma, prejudices that exist in the woman. And thus, it requires thorough reforms in the institutions so that these patriarchal attitude that is prevalent in the society is not reflected in these institutions. Then the initiatives that are taken to see that the sports are developed, and also the initiatives that could actually improve the work environment. Like the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act. And we have certain institutions that are trying to improve the administration of the sport, that is Sports Authority of India, the guidelines, which provides to prevent and address the issues of sexual harassment. But these are to be done on war footing. And abuse within the sports industry. How could that happen without the thorough reforms in the institutions? Then the Khelo India is one of the initiatives through which we are trying to see that the sports is developed at the grassroots level by conducting competition at the grassroots levels. And then National Center of Sports Science and Research is another program which tries to bolster research, education and innovation in enhancing the performance of elite athletes. So selecting the elite athletes and seeing that their performance is improved and they could compete at the international level and get medals to the country. The important thing is the prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. It has mechanism to see that the grievances raised by the women could be addressed. It has an institutional mechanism like internal complaints committee wherein the women could raise the grievances of the possible sexual harassment that they have experienced in the workplace and see that it could be addressed. The grievance is to be addressed. Within this act, we have various activities like helping the victim, raising the awareness of the prevalence of the rights under this act, etc. Why we need to support the victim? Because again and again, what we are saying is the victims are victimized rather than empowered. And this empowerment is required so that people could raise to the challenge and question the power that this is unacceptable. That is why common man is not feeling empowered on account of the happenings in the society. The powerful are going scot-free, the feudalistic mindset is still prevalent, and their influence in the institutions is ultimately leading to the lack of power to the common man, thus not getting due justice. Thus this problem is far widespread and need proper overhaul. This completes this article. Now let us look at the next one. This article is on Sahitya Academy Awards. Sahitya Academy Awards, as you know, are the literary awards given by Ministry of Culture. This is important because it leads to recognition of certain important literary books. As we go along, we are going to see what the Sahitya Academy Award is all about and why it is important and why there is a need for important changes. The title of the topic is Awards for Words. The relevance, we'll be learning about the Sahitya Academy Awards. Syllabus, GS Paper 1, Indian Cultures, Salient Aspect of Art Forms, Literature. We have previous year questions on the recognition of arts, etc. For example, consider the following statement in respect of Bharat Ratna and Padma Awards. So similarly, you could expect question on the Sahitya Academy Award as well. The context of the article. The context is the Sahitya Academy Awards being given to the recognition of literature in 24 languages. The 24 languages are 22 languages that are mentioned in the schedule of the Constitution, and the 2 more languages, that is English and Rajasthan. This also showcases the linguistic diversity that exists in India. Coming to the Sahitya Academy Awards, it was founded in 1954 as an autonomous body under Union Culture Ministry. That is, the Sahitya Academy is one of the autonomous body which has been formed by the Ministry of Culture so as to promote culture in India. As you know, the literary works have the cultural elements ingrained in them. They evoke the way in which Indian culture is celebrated, is imbibed in our life. Thus, this literary work is important to see that our culture is preserved and conserved. At the same time, what we could do through these promotions is to generate awareness among the population of the way in which the culture of India has evolved over eons or over centuries. Thus, these awards are important. As we already seen, the awards are given to 22 languages listed in the 8th schedule and 2 more languages, that is English and Rajasthani as well. So totally 24 languages. Of course, these do not capture the extent of linguistic diversity that exists in India. Our languages are far more higher in terms of number. For example, tribals, Santals, etc. There are multiple languages. In the Gonds, Orans, etc. In the same time, certain languages which haven't been recognized in the schedule, that is the 8th schedule of the Constitution. It doesn't mean that the government of India is not undertaking works to promote or preserve these languages as well. There are other activities done to see that these languages are also conserved. We have rights in the fundamental rights as well to see that the languages which are considered in terms of numbers as minority in various states could also establish institutions so that they could conserve their language. Thus, our country recognizes the linguistic diversity, at the same time have measures to see that these are conserved. Then the categories and winners. The categories under which this prize is extended is the poetries, novels, short story collections, essays, literary study, etc. So there is varied, rich diversity in terms of recognition as well. Not only the prose, the poetry, short story, essays, etc. Now let us look into the importance of awards. It is an indication of the recognition of linguistic diversity, at the same time measures to promote the diversity, that is in the linguistic terms. Then the award is an encouragement to the writers of the literature or the content creators. How? They could witness a rise in sales of their linguistic works, especially in a country like India, where the literary works are not promoted. They do not gain traction like the Western literature does. There is no substantial PR work done to see that the book sales are higher. Thus, the measures taken by the government of India as well as certain state governments is important. So, that could ultimately increase the sales of the book. Then comes it, they could be taught in schools and universities. Like for example, in the schools, in the classes, etc., certain stories that have been recognized could become famous, and the government could utilize the potential to particular book has or the literary work has in terms of evoking sentiments that are good for the society or that are good for the individual, etc. And then discovery of hidden gems. Many times we might not come across those books until they are recognized. So recognition actually gives them the possibility of having a response in the first place. Thus, people will come across different literary works which couldn't have been possible without the awards. Next, it could be translated to other languages, the Indian languages or foreign languages. Thus, it will also lead to creation of international audience if the literary work has such potential. But there are certain issues. Of course, the Sahitya Academy is looking into various aspects so that it could promote the literature of the country. For example, it conducts literatures, readings, discussions, exchange programs, and workshops, including all communities. These are done so that the promotion is done, or recognition of literature could be done by diverse readings across different languages, as we already seen. But the problem is the promotion is not adequate enough to get attention. Like, for example, if you look at the Pulitzer Prize, it gets international recognition. Similarly, we have to see that the Sahitya Academy also pulls off that kind of promotion activity where entire Indians will be glued to know about the literature or the literature awards. Similarly, the website, which is a modern means to generate awareness, gain traction, to see that our literature is read, that is woefully inadequate as well. There is a need for increasing digital imprint of Indian literature, and Sahitya Academy should come forward and take that initiative. Then comes the social media presence is also abysmal. So both these are an indication that there is a need for upgradation in terms of the way the literature is promoted. Then only we could expect that the literature of India is promoted, as well as how the interest could be generated among Indians to read the literature of the India. This completes the article. Now let us look into the next one. This article is on the implementation of DevINE scheme. DevINE scheme is intended to promote the development of the northeastern region. The title of the topic is Ministry Holds Meet with CMs of Northeast States over lag in DevINE scheme. So it shows that there is lag in implementation of the DevINE scheme. The money that has been allotted for implementation, etc., is not being utilized to its fullest extent. That requires a review. Thus, the Ministry of Development of Northeastern Region has conducted a meeting with the CMs of the Northeastern states regarding the lag in implementation of the scheme. The relevance of the topic is government schemes, Northeast India, and UPSC syllabus, prelims, economic and social development. So the context is Prime Minister's office has recently given a report that less than 10% of the money or the resources allocated under DevINE scheme have been spent. So that requires a thorough review. Thus what happened is a meeting, which we have already seen. About the DevINE scheme. Firstly, the nodal ministry, as we already seen, is the Ministry of Development of Northeast Region. Then it is introduced in the Union Budget 2022-23. This is important fact you have to remember, because many times these are asked in the examination. Then it is a central sector scheme. That is also an important aspect. The scheme could be centrally sponsored, or the scheme could be central sector schemes. So this is a central sector scheme. That means 100% of the funding is done entirely by the center. The scheme's total allotment is rupees 6,600 crores for the period of 2022-23 to 2025-26. So this is a trivial fact. Sometimes even the extent of resources allocated has also been asked in the preliminary examination. Next, let us look into the objective. The objective is, firstly, it funds the infrastructure projects. The infrastructure projects like roads or rail, etc. And it has been aligned with the PM Gati Shakti scheme. PM Gati Shakti scheme intends to develop roadways in the country. And thus, alignment with it actually increases the possibility of increasing the road transport in the Northeast region. Northeast region, as you know, has a hilly terrain, and thus there is a need for improving infrastructural connectivity. The connectivity of the Northeastern region is important, especially given its border with Bangladesh, Myanmar, and China. At the same time, the insurgency problem, the multiple tribes that live or inhabit in this region, requires us to see that the development is carried out in a fast-paced manner. And many times, the differences among the tribals in terms of socio-economic development is the root cause of the tribal conflicts. The insurgency could be stopped, or it could be stalled by the developmental projects. Thus, this developmental initiative is prominent. And if we develop the Northeastern region, there is a possibility to reduce the impact of terrorism on Indian soil as well. Given it could be a breeding ground for the black marketing, the smuggling of arms, drugs, weaponry, etc. At the same time, a conduit to carry out the black marketing businesses. Thus, that is why development of the northeastern region is important. The most important thing is it's a part of the country, and so we need to see that the developmental activities are far-reaching and far widespread, rather than being concentrated in certain regions within the country. Thus, this scheme also supports the social developmental projects which are to be taken in the northeastern region. And what it ultimately leads to is it enables the livelihood in both the youth and the women. And thus what happens is it will ultimately lead to fill the developmental gaps that exist with regards to the northeastern region in comparison to the rest of the country. At the moment, only 11 projects are selected. They, as you know, are less when compared to its potential. There is a need for improving the extent of projects that are given approval by the Development of Northeastern Region Ministry. How it could be done? It could be done by the active participation of not only the state government, but also the central government. But there are certain issues that are lingering. As you know, the Manipur crisis is still raging on. Of course, it has dwindled. The extent of crisis is lessened a bit, but yet there is a need for us to see that the crisis is averted. One of the reasons why the developmental projects in the Manipur are not to the extent which we expected is due to this crisis. Thus, Manipur government has said that it requires more time, it requires more peace in the region so that it would initiate the projects. At the same time, planning of the projects is also required. That requires the administration of the state's capabilities to be utilized for development of the planning in the first place. Next, the way forward. Northeast region has a potential in terms of reaching economic boom. It could be through hub of ecotourism that we could develop there. We could develop food processing industry, forest produce because it has abundance of forest resources. Thus, we could monetize those resources for the development of the northeastern region people. Next, PM DevINE initiative is such an important initiative for carrying out these developmental activities, and then it will help India to see that the development is decentralized. This completes the article. Now let us look into the government aims to increase the creche facilities. There is a scheme called Palna scheme that tries to provide the daycare facilities to the children. The creche facilities, as you know, provides the ability for the mothers to see that they could work or focus on the work, both in the organized and unorganized sector. So this particular topic is about it. Government aims to set up 17,000 creches across India. Creches across India. The result of the topic, we will be learning the welfare scheme and performance of the scheme. Next, UPSC syllabus, schemes in news, GS2, welfare schemes for vulnerable sections of the population. We have the previous year question, which has been given in the year 2019, like the service area approach. And mains question about the midday meal scheme. Similarly, we could expect a question in the Palna scheme. Next, the context. The government has introduced the Palna scheme is the context. And what is this scheme? The objective of the scheme is to see that the women from various socio-economic background could focus or could increase their participation in the employment in both organized and unorganized sectors. As you know, after giving birth to a child, there is a necessity for them to take care of the child. And if the burden is reduced on account of establishing the creche facilities, they could focus more on the work as well, in addition to taking care of their children. The assistance from the state is important because it is a costly affair, and doing it at scale will reduce the cost to the government. At the same time, it will reduce the burden upon the parent to see that they could afford the. The focus is the quality daycare facilities of the children to be given to the children are taken care, and then providing the safe and secure environment, nutrition, health, and cognitive development of children. In the initial years, they are to be given extra care, and we could see that it could be get done through this scheme. Then the intervention is to establish 70,000 creches, you already seen. As per the scheme, it will deploy, or the aim is to deploy 2 additional creche workers in the Anganwadi. That is the creche workers who look after the care requirements of the children. Next, the government data shows that the Workforce participation of the women has increased to 37% in 2022. It is an important achievement. Why? Because the labor force participation rate of India is lower when compared to the developed countries and the peers as well, that is the developing countries, and compared to the Bangladesh, etc. We need to increase the workforce participation from the women, and this is one of the way through which we could increase the participation of the women. As of March 31st, 2021, 13.87 lakh Anganwadi and many Anganwadi centers are operational across this country. Thus, this provides us the potential to increase the reach of the creche facilities. The broader impact is the Parla scheme contributes to women empowerment because ultimately it provides them the opportunity to look after their career prospects as well. As financial independence is an important aspect to see that they could get overall independence, autonomy in terms of decision making and contribute to the welfare of the family and welfare of the society at large. These supportive measures for children is aimed at facilitating increasing women's participation in the workforce, the ultimate aim. We have other schemes too, like Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, which provides compensation to the wage losses during the pregnancy. Similarly, we have Integrated Child Development Scheme, which has certain facilities like preschool, non-formal education, and provision of nutrition. The beneficiaries are the children, and also it has a component to look into the 0 to 6 years children, pregnant women, and lactating mothers as well. So all this is important to see that the mortality, malnutrition, morbidity, etc. of the children to be reduced. Then we have Bala scheme as we see in this slide. So these are the various initiatives taken to see that the women, especially the pregnant mother as well as the mother after the delivery of the child, has the facilities to focus on the career prospects as well. This completes the article. Now let us look into the Prelims Practice questions. Now coming to the first question. Consider the following statements. PM DevINE is an initiative to boost religious tourism in the Eastern India. This is false. As you know, PM DevINE scheme is intended to promote the development in the Northeast region. Next, PM DevINE is a centrally sponsored scheme. This too is false, as PM DevINE is a central sector scheme. Which are the statements given above is or are correct? The answer is D, neither one nor two. Next, Palna scheme, in which creches are established in Anganwadi, is implemented under which ministry? It is Ministry of Women and Child Development. So answer is D. Next, consider the following statements with Sahitya Academy Awards. It recognizes literary works in 24 Indian languages, including listed in the 8th schedule of the Constitution in English and Rajasthani. This is true. Under these 4 awards are given for each language. This is false, because there is no such provision. Sahitya Academy is an autonomous organization under Ministry of Culture. This is true. So, how many of the above given statement is or are correct? The answer is B, only 2. Next, which of the following is not a global credit rating agency? Standard & Poor's, Moody's, Brickwork, Fitch, etc. are the global credit rating agencies. CRISIL is domestic credit rating agency. So, answer is A. Next, with respect to the credit rating agency, which of the following statement is correct? Credit rating agency are regulated by RBI. Which agency placed India at BBB with a stable outlook? This is false. S&P Global Rating rated India as BBB minus with a stable outlook. This too is false. Moody's gave a Baa3 rating on India and maintained a stable outlook. This too is false. The answer is A, RBI. In India, the credit rating agencies are regulated by RBI. Next, the main question. Sexual harassment in the sports sector is a multifaceted issue that undermines the integrity of sports and the dignity of athletes. Critically analyze the underlying factors contributing to sexual harassment in this field. See, sexual harassment in other fields or in the fields of sports has the similar underlying issues. One of the important issues faced is the political interference in the sports field, because sports is generally administered by the government of the particular countries. So, how the government conducts itself is important to see that these kinds of events or instances are not repeated in the future, especially stringent procedures so that deterrence could be created among the individuals holding the position of power in creating such environment is important. So, First, they highlight the instances of the sexual harassment and also its impact on athletes. As we've already seen, the impact it creates on athletes. It reduces the morale, it reduces their ability to focus on their profession, and it reduces the values ultimately in the organizations. Also, the reputation of the country will be at stake on account of these kinds of instances. So, preventing it is important. Then in the body, write the factors that are contributing to sexual harassment. We've already seen political interference, non-transparency, lack of accountability, and at the same time, not providing enough resources for strengthening the organization, enough resources to see that the representation in the powerful position is widened. Also, the power dynamics on account of political interference, the cultural factors like the patriarchy, commodification of women, etc., which are the negative externalities of the society, is not only found in India, it is found in the other countries as well. The misogynistic attitude is also one of the reasons for the prevalence. Next, the lack of awareness and education with regards to the rights that are extended under various legislations is also one of the important reasons. And thus, also analyze the current policies and measures with regards to preventing these kinds of instances. For example, Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act. In the conclusion, write down the multifaceted nature, thus it requires broadening in terms of finding the solutions. Just simply focusing on organization doesn't help. It should have a thorough structural changes that requires society to be sensitive towards the needs of the women as well as the attitudinal changes of the men. So this completes the analysis. Please do like, share, and subscribe our channel. Thank you.